released by the Parliament of the Australian state of New South Wales finds that by the year 2050, without government intervention, koalas will be completely extinct in that state. And this is after bushfires tore through the region in 2019 and continued into the early part of this year. By some estimates, more than 30 people and 1 billion animals across Australia were killed by those fires. So we want to bring in Jeff Corwin, who's been following all of this. Jeff, I think we all can remember those heartbreaking images of koalas trying to escape the flames. Can we talk about the impact of those bushfires on the population?
Well, that's a great observation, that incredibly heartbreaking moment where we realize because of human negligence, whether it be how we're treating the environment in Australia and abroad, or whether because of climate change, another sign of humans not being wise with natural resource use, we see 1 billion animals literally vaporized from this one event. This one event, the Australian bushfires, consumed more than 13 million acres of habitat. And long before the fires began, we need to remember koala bears were in trouble. In the region, in the district, in the state of New South Wales, the population of koalas was hovering at around 36,000 animals. The total population before the fires throughout the entire region of Australia was approximately 300,000 animals. They now believe throughout Australia, 75% of the koala population is gone. And in the state of New South Wales, it's been reduced so much to the point that their example, their finest national park, what would be our Yellowstone version of national park, which is the Blue Mountain National Park, lost 90% of its habitat, and that entire population of koalas was extirpated from the fires.
Whoa. Okay, that's the fires, but you said koalas were already in trouble before the fires. For what reason? Was it the habitat as well? Were they losing their habitat, or were there other factors?
Australia is your classic textbook example of when human beings come, when pioneers come and colonize a land, as humans have been doing in Australia for thousands of years, and of course, very recently with Europeans around the 19th century, the moment humans step their foot upon a new landscape, the seeds of extinction are sown. And that is the case with Australia. So what has driven the koalas to the brink of extinction? Kind of the flashy tinsel stuff you focus on, the flicker of light would be these fires. But long before their fires, habitat loss. The loss and the fragmentation of habitat has devastated koalas. The impact of dogs and cats. Dogs, both feral dogs and domestic dogs that are on the loose, kill thousands of koalas every year. And perhaps the biggest predicament is a STD amongst koalas, very similar to human sexually transmitted disease called chlamydia, but a koala version of chlamydia has devastated them. So you get this perfect extinction storm of humans not being good stewards. They destroy the landscape. They introduce invasive species to an animal ill-equipped to manage that challenge. Then you throw in a novel disease, and the cherry on this extinction sundae are the devastating bushfires.
Mm-hmm. And sort of surrounding that is the issue of climate change, which many believe contributed to the bushfires. Tell us about the impact of climate change.
Climate change has made an incredible impact to the bushfires. And what's interesting, I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I look at the way many people around the globe have a counter reaction, almost a defensive reaction to wearing masks. They're going against science, saying, oh, masks and these sort of precautions, this social distancing doesn't mean a difference. It's affecting our freedom. Well, a lot of people have that similar argument, anti-science argument against climate change. They'll look to fireworks. They'll look to human-caused events or lightning as the reason why the bushfires were ignited. The truth is, we know that these forests in Australia, which are some of the oldest forests in the world, they are the original Pangea forests. that spawned all the other forests around the planet. These forests evolved over billions of years to have a partner with fire. Fire is actually critical to the germination of many of their plants, but they were ill-equipped to manage this type of extreme heat. You get these spreading fires which are fueled by climate change. It's actually changed the structure of the forest. They burn differently. Fires burn at the canopy level and move from one forest to the next before they begin touching the forest floor. They've actually changed the physiology of the forest themselves. So all of this coming together is what's contributed to the impact of these species. This heat event, before I was filming in Australia before these fires, and I was filming in Australia up to the fires and covered them here and there with some of the wildlife that's been impacted. Before the fires began, the entire bat species was put on life support because these fruit-eating bats, the flying foxes, these icons of the Australian sky, were literally, the moms were abandoning their pups. They were abandoning their pups because they couldn't handle the heat wave. 90% of a generation of these foxes, these flying foxes, these large fruit-eating bats died. But the great question is, why should you care? Well, 50% of all the trees and plants in the rainforest of Australia are pollinated and have their seeds dispersed by these foxes. So you can kind of see the domino effect, that ripple effect from climate change. And the fires are just one example of the impact of of the changing climate of our planet.
And, you know, when I think about Australia, there are so many unique animals that only exist in Australia. I imagine, you know, seeing these animals must be a massive draw when it comes to tourism. What sort of impact, just economically, is it having when, you know, there are fewer and fewer koalas to go see?
Absolutely. People go to Australia because they want a little bit of the culture, they want a little bit of the art scene, but they really want the nature. They want that Great Barrier Reef, oh, by the way, which is on life support as well. 50% of the barrier reef is gone. And then you have the interior. You have all these incredible species. Just because of these fires alone, as many as 14 uniquely Australian species were vaporized to extinction. We will never see them again. Species that I have actually filmed in my career. There are areas where I have filmed for my TV shows that are gone, and the species that live there are gone as well. I was just in Australia. We filmed an incredibly rare species of kangaroo, and this kangaroo was an orphan because its mom was jumping out of the fires and jumped in front of the grill of an oncoming car. She was killed instantly. Someone came by and rescued that little baby. I was there at that moment to tell its story. But here's the thing. That baby kangaroo is an environmental refugee because its forest that has been there for tens of millions of years no longer exists. It's charred.
So, Jeff, I think it's important to, you know, tell people all this information, but sometimes I feel like, you know, we become a little bit Debbie Downers because it's just, you know, so sad news after sad news after sad news. But this inquiry also came up with a list of recommendations. So I think people need to know that something can be done, right? So tell me about some of the suggestions that could maybe turn things around a bit.
Well, there's always hope, and there is a chance. We can look to our own legacy with the environment here in the United States prior to this presidential administration, which is the worst of the worst when it comes to protecting nature. If we can survive what we have now, we can get back on focus as one of the great leaders in conservation. But if you look at historically what the United States has done with restoring the bald eagle, the American elk, the alligator. These are species that almost disappeared, and we brought them back through science. Australia is very much akin to this. They have great science technology. They have a great national park and research system, great zoos and conservation organizations. So they have the tools in the chest, in the war chest, to make a difference. They have these weapons. So what do they need to do? One, they need to focus on restoring habitat. They need to focus, number two, on building corridors, connecting good healthy ecosystems bridged by these corridors so animals can travel and migrate without the fear of being impacted by human beings. They need to have a system of emergency hospitals and responders in place so when something happens, these animals can get rescued and back in the wild. Australia has an incredible track record for this, and they need to manage the impact of non-invasive species. They have the framework in place. They have the dots. They just need to connect them, and Australia is very good at that. These simple, pragmatic, common sense steps, protecting habitat, restoring species, supporting species, these koalas can make a comeback.
Well, they sound like, they're doable. I have never been to Australia, but it is on my bucket list. And when I go down there, I want to be able to see some of these natural wonders. Jeff Corwin, thank you so much for sounding the alarm.
I was going to just say, remember, when you save a koala bear, you're not just saving this individual ambassador of Australia. When you save a koala, you are saving the umbrella that secures the entire ecosystem, because that koala needs habitat. So that means the snakes, the bats, the turtles, everything else gets to survive. So that there is this incredible ripple conservation effect by impacting positively one species.
Yes,
and by
we
the
are
way,
all
don't
connected,
ever call
Jeff.
them koala bear. All my Australian friends will say, don't say koala bear, it's koala. So I correct
Just
myself.
koala? Okay. I stand corrected. I will not make that mistake again.
That was me. I always sneak the bear with koala. They're not connected.
All right. Having the proper knowledge is everything. Jeff Corwin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.